someone might think that emptying is having less of, but actually it's the ability to be more of.
I love your insights, and you are right. It's not less, it's more, and you feel the moreness of that divine energy, you know, the expansion of it, that unconditional love. And I think that's the thing that I don't think, actually, I know that is one aspect that I love about my work, is that I'm constantly allowing that degree of source energy into my being, into my space, into my home, into my workplace, into wherever I am. And you don't just have it during the session. Yeah. It starts to stay with you, because we all have that ability, by the way. We all can connect to the divine, to source, to spirit, whatever the divine energy, however you like to name it, God. We all have that capability. And when we do that, we organically embody source. And so all of a sudden, the things that you're wanting to achieve, shall we say, on a spiritual level, or even in terms of ascension goals around being non-judgmental, compassionate, unconditionally loving, and patient even, all those things start to just flow.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to season 2 of Thrive with Sharon podcast. I am your host, Sharon Land, a holistic psychotherapist, a healer, a spiritualist, a mystic, and public speaker, and so many other things. And one of my passions is to be able to bring all of these great conversations and people who I have come to know in my life, or admire, or want to know, and I brought them into your living room. And I love this podcast. The feedback that we're getting is incredible. And so I want to encourage you to engage as much as possible. And so far, all of my guests that have joined me have been so gracious to respond to any kind of questions or what have you. So please don't hesitate to reach out. But today I'm so excited. I was thinking about this prior to recording. I have known this beautiful soul for many years, and I think even dating back to like 2017. I think that's when we originally connected. And so it is such a joy to be able to have Sin Mariani in my podcast room right now. It's so exciting. And we coordinated. Yeah. And so I just want to do a quick little introduction of Sin and what she does. I think you guys are going to love, love, love this beautiful soul. So a psychic decades ago said that she saw a large antenna on Sin's head that connects upwards towards the galaxy. And at that time, Sin didn't understand what that meant. And things are clearly different now if you know Sin. And she can hear and see and feel and know of that, which is not visible to most. And after a few years of mentoring, she began to use her gifts professionally to download pure guidance for individuals and humanity. This human lover says she is privileged to channel source energy. And with a reputation in Sydney and across Australia as one of the best psychics from down under, Sin is quick to ensure that others understand that she is channeling, and her accuracy in readings and ability to provide effective energy healing, see into the past, the present, the future, and connect with deceased loved ones, star beings, and guides is all due to her channel. With channeled meditations on Insight Timer, YouTube, and videos, or articles on the usual social media channels, online meditation groups, and progressive series, Sin continues to support individual and collective ascension with her unique and calming voice for sure, and loving presence, absolutely, and her serene wisdom. So, Sin, I am so happy to welcome you to the podcast today.
Thanks, Sharon, for inviting me. I feel privileged to be a part of your incredible podcast. So thank you indeed.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that I would have to say, with all of the bios that I've read so far, yours is the most spot on as far as like how it describes you. You are such a loving being in soul. And you and I very early on decided that we wanted to connect. And so I was the recipient of your channel, and it was beautifully orchestrated, yet at the same time, it was just so filled with love that I felt very supported in the container, knowing that anything that did come through was really coming from the highest and best good, which is love, right? Has that always been for you?
I would say since I've been mentored, yes, I feel that there was this sense of being mentored, first of all, in a really positive and powerful way to continuously let go, let go, let go. When you have to, when you're channeling, you have to let go of your own thoughts, your ideas, your opinions. This idea that you know everything. I think humanity at large, the sooner we let go of thinking we know everything, so much more will always come through. And so I was able then to go higher, and then I'd be encouraged to go higher and higher again, even to really ensure really that the information that I'm getting or what I'm connecting with is the highest intelligence in that way from source. And I think what's really apparent about that for people who are having a reading or, say a channeled meditation group or something of mine will feel, you're going to instantly feel the source energy. So they walk away feeling calm, and they walk away feeling healing. And sometimes it's not because I've done energy healing, Sharon, but it's literally because source energy is present. And it's about stepping aside, ego even stepping aside to allow that to fully embody the session, which I think is the essence of channeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it really is. And and I also want to just share that I think that, what you're doing is you're becoming a divine instrument. You're like you said, emptying, right? And sometimes someone might think that emptying is having less of, but actually it's the ability to be more of.
I love your insights.
Right?
You always have such incredible insights. I've listened to some of your other podcast shows, and I've just gone, who is this person? Like, they're so knowledgeable, but so insightful, like it's just like that perfect blend. And you are right. It's not less, it's more. And you feel the moreness of that divine energy, the expansion of it, that unconditional love. And I think that's the thing that I don't think, actually, I know that is one aspect that I love about my work, is that I'm constantly allowing that degree of source energy into my being, into my space, into my home, into my workplace, into wherever I am. And you don't just have it during the session. Yeah. It starts to stay with you, because we all have that ability, by the way. We all can connect to the divine, to source, to spirit, whatever the divine energy, however you like to name it, God. We all have that capability. And when we do that, we organically embody source. And so all of a sudden, the things that you're wanting to achieve, shall we say, on a spiritual level, or even in terms of ascension goals around being non-judgmental, compassionate, unconditionally loving, and patient, even, all those things start to just flow through you. So I'm a very different person to pre-channeling Sin Mariani. Definitely a very different person. Yeah.
Yes. And
Yes.
well, you brought me to the threshold, so I'm walking through. What was Sin Mariani like before?
Erratic, definitely prone to regular bouts of anxiety without necessarily identifying that I was experiencing anxiety. Certainly through major changes of life, I would have serious experiences of anxiety, certainly feeling that in a very intense way, still not totally recognizing that it was anxiety for some unknown reason. I definitely had a very, very busy mind, and would be more erring on the side of fear, not even caution as well, but a lot of fear around things. And my own mind would often present many scenarios since I can remember as a child. It would want to sort of, I suppose, to keep us feeling safe, like all of us have for different reasons. It would run around the egoic mind, really, like it does, seeking evidence of whatever I believe. Now, unfortunately, I was believing that there could be threats anywhere and that I should always have a justification ready or an explanation ready or something to back myself up with. And so my mind was, a million miles a minute trying to keep myself in a state of protection, really. Whereas now I don't really do that. Like, I do think through things. There are times where something may trigger, in a sense, some anxiety again, yet I have different tools and I can very quickly and easily connect back to the source energy to come back to faith. And then people will say, wow, how are you so calm in this situation that we're all not about? Sorry, I'll say that again. How are you so calm in this situation when we're all freaked out right now? So there's that underlying calm that starts to come through.
Yeah. Yeah, I can completely relate to that, and on so many different levels. And so for me, um I would say that I probably presented in a way where I didn't always look like I was um hyper vigilant in my thinking, but I
Mm.
was, right? Um, would you say that it was more apparent, or would you say that you did a good job at kind of prior to being able to connect with source and be able to really hone your gifts? Um, were you were you pretty good at, would people look back and say, I never knew?
Yes. Yes. I think a lot would. I think a lot of people would have looked back and just said that being the extremely sociable, self-confident, capable human being, kind of saying capable human being that was highly functioning, then most people wouldn't have picked up. I think there would be some people, say, for instance, say a certain friend right now who's a mental health nurse would have probably gone, oh, yeah, you've got anxiety there. I
Yes.
said,
Yes.
I'll give an example though, Sharon. I thought though I had fooled pretty much everybody because when I had a very debilitating bout just before I really stepped into the spiritual path, so like most of us, you have, well, I wouldn't say it was the first, but yet another dark night of the soul that really did take me down for the count. So much so that I couldn't work for 3 months and
Wow.
didn't like leaving the home. I wasn't agoraphobic, but I've just found home safe. And so I didn't really want to be out in the world for a while. And mind you, it led to a spiritual journey. It was all worthwhile. I have no regrets about any of it, about the triggers, about anything that had occurred in my life at that point in time. If anything, I'm grateful, completely grateful.
Mm.
However, I do remember calling my mum up at that stage and saying to her that things were happening in my life and that I felt a lot of anxiety and wasn't functioning very well. And then my mum, to my surprise, says to me, oh, but darling, she's like, Sin, you've always had anxiety. And I went, really? And I was sort of sitting here as this, 41 was I, 41-year-old,
Oh my
42-year-old,
goodness.
sitting there going, what? And then she said to me, and she continued, and she said, look, darling, I remember even at school, as soon as you got an assignment, you'd have to go home and start working on it because you get anxious about not having it finished in time or it not being good enough and not being organized. So you would have to get onto it straight away and have everything done early so that you could have some sense of, in a sense, won't say calm, but some peace around the expectations that were placed on me at school. And Sharon, I still experience that. I'm back at university, as you know, and I still have this experience sometimes where I feel there are certain expectations of me. And my first point of call is to go into a little bit of fear and panic. Even though I'm extremely capable, highly functioning human, I can still go into that panic of having to, for instance, organize an industry placement for my current
Mm-hmm.
course. It's sort of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, what do you mean I've got to do all this? And I have to talk myself through and say, wait a minute, you can do this. You do all these things all the time.
Yeah.
You'll be all right. Except for the business, though. This is interesting. For downloading light, which, as you know, is my business, I don't have any issues of feeling anxiety around organizing a new progressive series or booking in my clients or scheduling or following up or any of those things. I don't. It's just
Mm.
around those things that I feel like are real world. I realize I'm really sensitive,
Yes.
and yet I'm intelligent and capable. But I'm very, highly sensitive person at the end of the day,
Yes.
pre this
Yes.
work. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And okay. So two different roads that I want to go down. So the first one is, yes, I think that um, most of us who have gifts, and you and I share in our gifts in the sense that, I have all of the senses available to me in all areas and aspects of accessibility. And so, because of that, you're kind of highly tuned when you're extremely young.
Mm.
And, for me, in my case, experiencing traumatic situations, sometimes it can heighten those senses even more
Yes.
and those gifts even more, right? So, so I do think that we share that in the sense that being an
Mm.
HSP, and for people who are hearing this for the first time, I don't know if you want to share what HSP is.
Okay, so basically, it's an acronym for highly sensitive people or person, highly sensitive person.
Yeah.
I do recommend googling highly sensitive people or highly sensitive person, because there's a really good website written by the founder of this theory, and I'm so sorry, but I've forgotten her name. But it's really interesting. You can even go on there and do a free questionnaire that will
Mhm.
tell you where you rank. Now, I ticked all questions except two. So I got a very high score. And then I did it for my daughter, who's 5.5, and she got a tick in the box for everything but one, which of course is no surprise at all. I've known from birth, like from the time she was sort of here as a baby, very, very highly sensitive. And I think the thing is though, I did hear a comment on somebody's, perhaps it was an Instagram thing or something else, where somebody had written a post to say that the majority of HSPs and empaths were not actually HSPs or empaths. They just lived traumatic lives, and
Mm.
therefore they were highly alert to what was going on around them. Now, it's interesting because I felt like I needed to check in on that. I didn't dispute. It's not my place to dispute or say what's
Right.
right or wrong, but I do, I suppose, as I'm sure you do, Sharon, you go with what you are feeling or intuitive feeling on things.
Mhm.
And I think having, being a channel for a good 10 years now, and I'm sure, Sharon, as well for you, that you would have very similar experiences. You do pick up on sometimes when things now start to feel too narrow,
Yes.
or when a thought or a belief is too boxed in. And
Yes.
so I did have a little check-in, because I was sort of saying to Sos, I don't know that we can say all these people are empaths and HSPs because of trauma. Yeah, I'd say a fair few have experienced trauma, or for them perhaps even certain experiences felt heightened because they are so sensitive. But that's not to say that their experience is any less real or true for them or for us.
Yeah, I love that perspective. I was actually thinking also that just swimming in the energy of your example of the post, right? And then the comments were that there was almost like this justification of a very specific belief of creating this like black and white thinking, right? So I really truly believe sometimes And one of the things that I do is I try to dispel the myths that are being sent out about things like being an empath, right? And I even work with people who are in the, clinicians in the mental health arena, where they're really just understanding like the fact that there was a word, a person called an empath and what that even means. And so depending upon how the information is being disseminated to them, they really truly believe that they are an empath. And there is this low vibrational connection to it, which is like that they have to feel other people's pain in order for them to connect, that they have to kind of martyr themselves and walk around feeling at the end of the day always energetically drained because they're empathic, and that means that they can see and feel and or whatever it is, right, that other people's experiences.
Yes.
And I have 4,675 words that I want to say about that, but I'll just suffice it to say that that's not always necessarily true. And it's not the end of the story when it comes to the journey of an empath, but it can be part of the story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. I suppose I would add to that in my experience, again, with readings and working with, often I work with parents, and a lot of them have children with gifts. And the thing that I suppose I'm witnessing more and more, because it's not just the people I work with, it's friends, it's other children at my daughter's school or other situations around children, that there are a lot more children, teenagers, young adults even right now, who are empathic. And what it feels for me, and I get the shiny, yes, keep going from source on this, is in all honesty, it's a belief that I've been sensing, and I suppose starting to, I wouldn't say hold on to, but certainly letting that gestate within me, is that more people are coming to this planet empathic.
Yes.
And the main reason being is that when you are truly in tune with your feelings and that of another person, you will not run around aimlessly starting wars, being aggressive, bullying, hurting animals, mistreating the planet, and certainly not intentionally harming one another. And it's not because I'm saying that every empath out there may not be hurting another person, but you will see often that there is such a high level of, shall we say, suffering that they go through.
Yes.
And the other thing that I think is important to recognize for empaths, and I may have done a video on this, I think I may have at some stage on Instagram, is for the empaths themselves to understand that it is a gift. It's helping you feel other people's feelings. You know, you might go to a supermarket and feel overwhelmed by all of the energies. I mean, I occasionally do. I'm more empathic in channel than generally speaking, but always highly sensitive. And so what I tend to do is I'll wear AirPods and listen to some music just to diffuse and create a bit more of a bubble for myself. I will put a white light bubble around me if things are too intense in the world, because say when COVID hit, we had big bushfires here in Australia, there was a lot of angst in the air.
Yes.
So I'll do things like that. But the key thing, I think, Sharon, here is for empaths to understand that, and this is liberating as well, is to understand that you are feeling what other people are feeling, but take what it is that you're perhaps meant to get from that, particularly if you are working with other people, or it's perhaps even you're, in a sense, close to family members. Take what you are feeling as if it is more a message for you to understand the other person better and what they're going through, and then let go of the energy. Let go of the feeling, let go of it all. It's like acknowledging, okay, thank you, divine, even message received. I now let go of that. Because if we embody all those feelings of everybody all the time and we think I'm feeling them, therefore they're mine, or I need to hold on to them, then yes, you're going to be overwhelmed and you're going to be, dare I say, adversely affected. And it's not the purpose. of the gift, if that makes sense. It's there to help you be the great healer that you've come here to be,
Yeah.
not to suffer.
Yes, 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 and yes. I love how you just described that. And also want to add one more piece, which is we don't we can process it, we can allow it to metabolize through us, because it like you said, it helps us, it gives us information. It's information, right, which helps us to be more compassionate, right?
Yes.
So we can realize that there's a difference potentially between your experience and someone else's experience, and that difference doesn't create a divide, it actually creates a connection. And the fact that you are able to feel
Yes.
a part of, and I wouldn't even say 100% of, but feel as much as source or God or the universe is allowing you to feel. Because I really truly believe that, I don't know about you, being a channel or intuitive or whatever you want to name it, there are things that you are not seeing.
Yes.
Because it's decided, right? It has nothing to do with whether or not you're a good channel or a bad channel, or not in your gifts or whatever. It's just that leaning into the source guidance, right? And really into
Yes.
to the fact that we're an instrument, right? But with regard to being an empath, I think that the most important thing is that we can feel all of those things. We can have this experience. We can create connection and empathy and compassion for one another, which then ultimately is going to do all of the things that you had mentioned, as far as, reduction of war and fighting and, harm and unnecessary.
Mm.
But at the same time, we don't just because we feel someone else's feelings have to fix it.
Exactly. Yes. You're
Yeah.
exactly right. It's not, I think, and I think that's the difference in this, is that it's sometimes understanding that you're feeling something, because you could say, in a sense, what I think, it is part of human evolution that we're all going to end up being empathic.
Yes.
And,
Yes. Yes.
and so it does allow us to be kinder, but not fix it. So perhaps if I walked past an elderly person and I felt an overwhelm of some sort of emotion, then I don't need to fix it, but I might give them a really, flash them a big smile that
Yes.
somehow tells them it's going to be all right. Because I know sometimes I've been in the middle of a breakdown and some stranger has given me that big smile. It's made me feel like, I don't know why, but I feel like things are going to be all right now, because that random person beamed at me the way they did. There was something about them. And we can energetically even we don't need to be the one giving it. I always, again, see us all as the vessels of, if I remember years ago, Sharon, before knowing that I was empathic or a healer, quite some time ago, actually, I might pass somebody. So I remember sitting on a bus, passing somebody that had a broken limb. And without thinking it, I could feel all this energy in my hands, and I felt sort of healing energy, and I didn't know what to do. And I thought, oh, that must be for them, because I really felt something for that person in that moment. So I just sent it to them. I didn't kind of go, oh, I'm doing all this. I was just sat there in the bus quietly for a minute and said, okay, send that in, without knowing, very intuitively, send that energy to that person. Perhaps there's pain there as well, send energy to them. And I think that's the thing, is like knowing that we can just send to that person some love and light from the divine, even so we don't feel drained. It's remembering the universe is God, is working through us.
Yes.
And the other thing I suppose that I would add to this, or touch on, is that, like I was saying before, like when I'm going into channel, actually even before I am, I think you just end up always in channel these days, but I know that before clients, I sort of deliberately, or intentionally feel like I'm sitting quietly and connecting. But I've noticed for a number of years now that I feel people's ailments before I have a session with them. So I may, half a day earlier, or the night before, I feel like, oh, I've got a bit of a headache, or it's just here, or I've got a backache, or
Mm.
feel a lot of tension in my chest and a bit like I can't breathe. Or
Mm.
so I'll check in, because usually I know these days if it's mine or not, but I'll quickly ask if I'm not sure, is this mine or the client's
Yeah.
source. And inevitably, I would say 99% of the time, it's the clients. And so it does mean when I connect with them, I can say, okay, have you been, I've been picking up, there's a lot of tightness across your chest here. And then I'll start to see the visuals of what goes on and know, sort of get that sort of, well, it's not even auditory, that sort of cognizance of knowing what's going on. And it forms that connection very early on with
Yeah.
somebody. Oh, yeah, I've been feeling that, as well as thinking that, as well as experiencing that. And I think this is the thing where, again, that's where it's the healing aspect. But even in the sessions, Sharon, it's not me. I'm not the healer.
Yes.
I'm the conductor. So I'm
Yeah.
not tired at the end of the day. I'm not tired after, I don't do too many clients a day. I prefer quality. But even then, I don't feel tired because I let source is actually doing all the work, really. I'm the empty vessel and I communicate it and share it. But other than that, I just keep flowing, that energy.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. I think the giver is the receiver, right?
Mm,
And
yeah.
so I love that you've positioned yourself as you have in this world with what you do. Obviously, because we benefit from it, but also because we know that that keeps you strong because you have figured out the right way to be the instrument, right?
Yeah.
And That's so it's so important. It's really, really important, especially if anybody wants to go into any kind of to take their gifts that they know that they have, or they have a knowing, right? And maybe they don't have
Yes.
exactly the words for it, but they know.
Yes.
And then to say, well, but how can I do that? Or maybe there are examples of that are that the people who are using their gifts are depleted at the end of the day, right? So that's
Yes.
not necessarily true, and so I think it's a wonderful thing to touch on today, so that whoever might be listening, if they, I think that somebody needs to hear this, so that's why we're talking about it.
Mhm.
That yeah, this is actually a beautiful, beautiful thing. And yes, of course, we do have to realize that this is a human experience, and we have to create some sort of a container for ourselves, right?
Definitely.
But I'm like you, where um even dealing with serious trauma, and especially, gosh, these past couple of years, we've all experienced a lot of it, and especially in the
Yes.
mental health arena, there's just a lot. There's a lot. And so I although it on a human level, and also on a all-knowing level, it's hard to realize that this is where we are, and that there are all these people who are experiencing all of these different areas of tension and stress and trauma and what have you. Um, the period at the end of the sentence for me always is that I am energized by the fact that me, you, and other beautiful healers out there get to be part of helping.
Yeah.
And that, like you said, sometimes it's when it's literally like, Sin, can I work with you? Can we do a session? Yes. Okay. We'll see you Thursday at 3. Other times it is when you're going um, on the bus or on the train, and you you're guided to
Yes.
be that instrument. And I just think, gosh, we get to do this.
Mm. Yeah.
How amazing is that?
Yeah, I agree. It is a privilege. I think at the end of the day, anyone working with, it's not to discount the importance of other people's work. So please don't think I'm saying this. But I do think anyone that is in any way working with others, working with other people, and I put that down to even, or not even, to people like hairdressers, for instance,
Oh.
who are the unpaid counselors of the
Yes.
world,
Yes.
every month or couple of months listening to people's stories. And and just, easing and being that safe container. There's so many of us, I think, that anyone who's really in that position of being able to work, I feel, with other human beings or animals or nature even, we really are privileged, Sharon. We're very privileged. And I feel that about my work. I had some clients yesterday, and yes, I'll be real. I feel like the sessions were phenomenal, although others will say to you that I will always say that my sessions were amazing. I think working with source energy, it's like you're always going to be blown away. If you get out of the way, you're going to be blown away by what's
Yes.
possible, what's real, what's happened, what's happening now, what's happened in someone's past life that's affecting now. Sometimes I've seen people's future lives, talk to them in the past, and that present life talk to them in the future, and all manner of healing going on across the the human timelines. I probably call it dimensions, but we say timelines. And I think the thing that that underlies this, though, is that, again, and I sound like I'm what's the word? It's, I suppose, as a generic thing to say, but it does remind you in a sense that we are all one. Because again, I think if we can walk past and feel someone else's pain, and the average person can do that. When I say average, I'm just saying someone who perhaps doesn't necessarily feel that they're empathic or have had that experience, but we still pick up on. We all have a degree, I believe, of being empathic. Some of that may have been shut down from trauma, from perhaps adopting avoidance as a coping mechanism, a whole other gamut of things. But I do think overall, we all have an element of being empathic. We do, unless, as I said, there's some sort of trauma. As we know, for some people, that trauma has been really substantial and has meant that they don't have any empathy, which is, again, another level of having to work with somebody. But when we understand that, it is that reminder of, yes, of course, we're all connected. Yes, of course, right now we care about what's happening to other people in the world, in Ukraine and elsewhere, might I add, that are having their homes and their cities and whatever, under threat, under attack. We all feel that. We feel that big wave of, sort of heaviness coming over all the way here to Australia, as if the world hasn't got enough going on. It's like, what more do you want to throw on the plate? Yet at the same time, I had this vision the other night, and I did draft it, Sharon, and I didn't end up posting it because I got maybe into my mind of thinking, are people going to take this the wrong way and misunderstand me in saying this? But the thing that I was shown was for all of us to stay in this space that aren't under attack, of trying to, in a sense, still enjoy your lives, get on in the ways that you can to be that joy, because we do shift the collective vibration. And yes, it's not to say not to be sensitive or caring or perhaps even contribute or sometimes it's donating funds or whatever else it's that you can do to help others. But it was this thing of like, hold that higher frequency in your life, because right now there's a lot that you can't do. But what you can do is to keep living your life in that way of what joy you're experiencing, up, raising that vibration. And the thing that really sealed it for me is that source showed me these people are your brothers and sisters, and they have done the same for you in other lifetimes when you've lived the same thing. Now, that actually makes me feel quite emotional, but I felt it. Because I know there's other lives that I've lived where I've been a brute. I know there's other lives that I've lived that have been absolutely horrendous. And, I wasn't the inflictor, I was the afflicted of violence. And so it's when we understand that, it's sort of like, okay, it's our turn, everybody. It's our turn to try and, balance that out. Because if we all fall into absolute despair, then energetically, that could be very devastating for humanity at large, which was what I felt was one of the biggest fears about COVID. Not so much the, shall we say, the disease itself. Yes, it was serious. It's taken lives. I acknowledge that. But if everybody collapses into a state of fear,
Mhm.
then that's quite serious. And Sharon, as you know, if the healers even fall into that state of fear and can't even be there to support healing for everyone who has mental health issues, even that were triggered by these events, then again, humanity at large is facing some pretty significant threats.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I agree. And I think both you and I probably have had this conversation or have shared the same sentiment for a while, which
Mm.
is even though this pandemic and this virus are real,
Mm.
um, because it's a reality that some people are living. However, I think that the bigger virus is fear.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And it's the more dangerous one. Sharon, we know that fear is, as I said, from my own personal experiences, that is what has been debilitating. It's what's meant sometimes I haven't been able to work. There was nothing actually, in a sense, shall we say, physically wrong with me,
Yeah.
but the fear was gripping me so strongly that I couldn't work. And so when we understand that there are other people out there living that level of fear and worse,
Yeah.
then we understand just how, in a sense, I want to say dangerous this is. And in that sense, I have, I guess, wanted to be very clear about what I contribute on social media. I haven't had a lot to say about a lot of the pandemic
Yeah.
because the last thing I want to do is fuel more fear, because in my experience, there have been two dominant narratives around it. And I don't really want to spend too
Yes.
much time on this. I'm sure you don't either.
Yeah.
But just suffice to say, there's been two very dominant narratives, and both of those are fueled greatly by fear. And I'm almost like, but light workers, healers, and there's many of you right now, we need all of you to rise back up. It's a bit like Elizabeth April said this. I love it. She said, the 3D is, being focused on the fear of the pandemic. I'm summarizing here. So, yeah, respect to you, Elizabeth. The 4D is the fixation, or really, and getting into the fear, but the fixation of seeing that there may be another story, in a sense, or another narrative, other things are going on. So at least opening your mind to see that other things are going on. And then the fifth, though, if we go to the fifth dimension, which is I much prefer to be, in that area,
Yes.
is rise above it all,
Hmm.
because there is only love.
Yes.
And within that, I've seen even from source, I hardly ever check on this. I actually had a client who asked me to check one time. Source showed me the planet is taken care of. We are taken care of. Divine. Source knows what's going on.
Yes.
And it's like to let go of it. Let go of it.
Mm.
Come back up here. This is where you're meant to be.
Mhm.
And you'll see there's a whole lot more, and everything's actually going to be okay. And I think
Mm.
that's the thing. We have to sort of remember we get to choose, where are we living in this? In any of the, shall we say, in any of the, I'll call them news stories, narratives, and realities that are out there, we get to choose to keep going back up to 5D, Sharon. And I think
Yes.
as, in a sense, as healers, dare I say, we have somewhat of a responsibility
Yes.
to try and keep our own vibrations high, to not be sullied by a lot of things that could sort of, in a sense, contaminate and just bring us down with fear. It's like we've signed up to be here, to be part of that light, to keep shining that. And so we can. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I I'm resonating with everything that you're saying, and also honoring and respecting the fact that your guidance to probably not go too deep on that particular topic
Mm.
is probably um, is very warranted. Um, I do want to say though that I also have adopted the same kind of a policy. I very rarely go into a reactionary stance and position. And it can be very challenging to not, because you obviously want to show that you care and that you're compassionate. Yet, I think that that kind of speaks into our ascension, right? Which is
Yes.
just because it's not on social media, it doesn't mean that you aren't working to help to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think that it this really lands us right into another thing that I wanted to talk about today, which is this idea of activation and reaction, right?
Mm.
And um, and being in a state of survival
Yeah.
versus thriving.
Yeah.
And so I'm hearing some of that in your conversation, but I would love to know a little bit more about um, what your thoughts are on that. And, you know, what is this part of, is this in your visage, or is this just something that, you know, it's not part of the work that you're doing, or something in your consciousness that you're thinking about?
No, I would say that I think there is a lot to the survival, coming from survival to thriving. And I love that this is a section of your podcast and I get to talk to this. The way I envisage this, and I also like to acknowledge that I think there are many different realities out there. Social constructionism will tell us that, but also just generally speaking, we do
Yes.
know we're all having different perspectives. So I don't like to ever say a blanket statement that everyone has to feel like, oh, I believe sin or I agree with you. I guess it's something I'm going to posit and take it or leave it. It's more along the sense that I feel that there are a lot of traumas that people live when we're younger all throughout life. Let's say it's because they don't just stop, oh, I had childhood trauma and that's it. Some people had quite amazing childhoods for the most part, but may have lived certain traumas in their adulthood or in relationships. And it's not even, traumas how we always think is related to somehow some form of abuse. Trauma can be, let's be real, absolutely loving somebody and them having a horrific motorbike accident and being in a
Yes.
sense, taken from your life. Trauma can be many different things. It can be the person who's, really wanted that child and had three miscarriages. Do you know what I mean? So we have to be very clear that trauma it's not just that. I think people just often think, oh, it's the person that, was abused or this or that in some way. It's a lot of those different, very intense human experiences. And yet I often sense that we have those because we are here as souls to grow on a whole other level. We
Mm.
have the senses, which means we're going to feel trauma emotionally, physically, psychologically, intellectually. There's any number of ways that we can feel it. And yet all of the trauma usually is, I see it as an opportunity for healing. When you're ready, there's a timing for that. That's the other thing. I really do believe there's timing of when we start that journey. And I do believe it's ongoing, Sharon. It's like to get to that thriving state, we keep healing. And I often say that to clients because they're like, but I've dealt with this 20 years ago, or I've been dealing with this for this, doing this, and this. No, I could say the same. Yeah, I've done psychotherapy and counseling and psychologists and any number of, other types of modalities of healing and kinesiology and crystal healers and, all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like energy work, etc. But it's like understanding that those layers come up again for you to heal on another layer because you're ready to heal again on a higher layer almost because of what you've already done and where you're at. So first of all, I like to say that people healing journey, as you would totally endorse, I'm sure, is ongoing. So it's not you getting it wrong, it's ongoing. But the thing around the survival to thriving, the thing I guess that I see and sense at the moment is that so much of that survival mechanisms is sometimes being activated by the world events and by media. And this is where I feel that we need to be aware of how much are we buying into that. And I'm saying even general media, maybe you've read an article that, I don't know, 50% of people in Australia now have high cholesterol and these are the reasons. And so when all of a sudden an average person might go, or sorry, people might go, oh, I've got, I better watch that and I could have cholesterol. And so they start to get hyper vigilant about that and worry they might get it and they're not even going to get it. But this is the sort of thing I'm saying where sometimes in a world that is triggering that, and I want to say this, I get a sense that this world is structured in that way because it does, in effect, create a perfect environment for us to be triggered so that we can heal, so that we can thrive. because
Yeah.
there's such a big difference from, as you know, Sharon, surviving. Like I told you before, I was running
Mm.
around very egotistical back in the day. I don't like to admit it, but I really was thinking I was highly functioning and very capable, and was in many ways, and yet suffering on the inside. And now I'm able to live this life where I'm thriving on so many levels, in terms of health, in terms of well-being, in terms of just everyday joy and peace. And some of that for me is actually being able to ascertain very clearly, those things are triggers. Do I want to be triggered by them? Now, some of those are triggers that don't even need to come here. Do you know what I mean? You're not even relevant. You
Right.
guys over here, you're the ones that are a bit scarier because I know you. But even then, we start to be
Mm.
able to choose to sort of go, okay, I know you're a trigger, and I'm still going to, in a sense, be present with myself to
Yes.
make a decision about how I'm going to respond, if I'm going to take that on, or if I'm going to come back to the tools that I have, or the peace that I've been cultivating, to keep allowing myself to thrive more.
Yes. Yeah. I love your description of the thing that sometimes when it's a new entity, you might be looking at it a little bit different, like, are you this? Are you that? And so it's easier to say yes or no because you're not really attached to the relationship at all. You're not attached to any
Yes.
outcome at all, right? But it's scarier with the people who are they're somehow in close proximity to you. And yeah, that is where our certainty of ourselves and
Mm.
our soul missions, as opposed to what our potential woundings are so important to be able to discern, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Because I think that um, my experience is that the way that you were taught it should be and the way that you thought it should be isn't necessarily the way that it is meant to be,
Mm.
or that you are here to be. And so for me, part of my suffering in my life very early on was the fact that I was so confused about the information, right?
Mm.
Um, but I also just want to say and add to the beautiful um, way that you described surviving to thriving is that I also think that um, you touched on information, right? Everything is information, and when you can be a witness to things, so when you can see, when you can get yourself at least to the point where you have some authority most of the time, or even if you don't, you find tools and ways to be able to bring yourself back to your own inner authority, so that you can really see everything as information. I love your vision of Mother Earth. She is well. She is
Yes.
well. And I think that one of the things that I've noticed, especially the past few years, is that um, people more and more and more are learning that it is okay to allow ourselves to let go of our problems. Right. And
Yeah.
you spoke into this, to your point earlier. And when we let go of our problems and we can actually give it to the earth, we don't need to feel guilty about that
Yeah.
because it's information,
Yeah.
and information creates intelligence. So the more that the earth knows what we're all experiencing because we're giving it and we're letting it go, right? And obviously to source and to God as well. But
Yeah.
but
Yes.
we part of our existence here on earth is that we're this
Yes.
it's an ecosystem, right? Our internal shifts, our emotional shifts have a lot to do with the shifts that are occurring in Mother Earth, right? And vice versa, right? It's an ecosystem.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to just say that if we as human beings, as divine beings, can look at our lives from a perspective of information, that creates intelligence within us.
Mm. It's
right?
exactly it's exactly that. We're processing information. You're
Mm.
right. For then to get that wisdom from it, for that intelligence. And I'll certainly say this probably as something in closing, that anytime I've worked with clients, and there's often a lot of times where they've been encouraged to let the anxiety drop all the way out through their body and down through their feet into earth, or other toxins or other things that you're working even with energy into earth, it's because earth knows how to transmute. Now,
Yes.
I'll always add, can you transmute this back to pure love? But really, I know without having to say it, I don't need to tell earth what to do or the divine. I'm not here to tell either what to do. They're way more mighty and powerful than me. But it really is that truth that earth will always transmute, as will trees. They'll transmute energy. They
Yes.
already do. They diffuse. Tree can witness violence. I saw this once in a vision. A tree can transmute violence that it's seen on a street corner near a pub where people often will fight after they've had too many drinks, and it will transmute that energy out of the air. It will mitigate it. And
Yes.
so when we understand that, you're right, Sharon. It's like, give it to earth. Source is going to feel all of our consciousness. Source is
Yeah.
going to understand how we process that information to become intelligence. In fact, that's what fuels higher consciousness, even for the source energy, as we know. So yeah, that's a really nice way of summing it up.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I am so grateful that you joined me today. We knew that it was going to, we had no, I said to Sin before we started, I said, so here are my notes, and it's literally a blank page. Here's my questions, literally a blank page. We knew that it was going to just be a beautiful flowing conversation. And it's always just such a gift for us to be able to share space together. And
Oh, definitely.
oh gosh, so part of my intention is that we are going to connect more, because I know
Mm-hmm.
we're literally on opposite ends of the earth, but it makes it a little bit more challenging. But I really do love connecting with you, and I hope that if anyone's curious or interested, that they do reach out to you and join you on one of your peer meditation groups, or in getting a private reading or channeling or whatever, because just your beautiful loving presence is wonderful. And I can't say enough about how much I really love you.
Oh, Sharon, you're beautiful. Thank you. I always feel you. It's the same. I always have this thing you write posts, even I'm always like, oh, who is this person? Just like you've just nailed it. So yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks for
so
having me
much.
on your show too.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And I hope you'll come back again.
Oh, certainly, most definitely.
Yes. Well, I hope that everybody enjoyed today's conversation with Sin Mariani, and, just felt all of the beautiful energies within this entire conversation and beyond. And I'm going to leave all of her contact information in the show notes. So please feel free to reach out to her, or you can reach out to me. But until the next time, I wish you so much love and lots of peace. Until the
Yeah,
next
same.
time.
Love, light, and peace to the beautiful world, everybody. Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay.